You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. It's great to be with you again. I'm here with CJ. We're going to talk about coaching, and we're going to talk about bad coaching, specifically how to become a bad coach. I mean, no, not that. What makes a bad coach and how hopefully you can avoid being that person. We could probably talk a lot about this one.
Yeah, so we could probably just do a lot of off the cuff talk because it's so funny. We spend so much time, focusing on people, how to become a great coach, what specific details of programming and conjugation schemes and any random things. And it's like, wait a minute, what does it take to make a bad coach? And we have a lot of stereotypes for, the Globo gym, clipboard holding personal trainer kind of thing. But they're not really the problem. There's a lot more than that.
Who's the problem?
Ooh. Going philosophical.
Internet coaches. Anybody who slides into your DMs with form advice.
I mean, yes. Okay, that's a great that. Who's the problem? There are a lot of problems. But I think for me at least, where it's so easy to aim at the stereotype, the Instagram guru who's more Photoshop and filters that sells a $19 template that they have no experience in delivering. They're like, oh, that's the problem with the industry. When in fact, you can be a really experienced coach, with a lot of qualifications and still be bad. So if I were to start, I mean, there's an essential component to what do you need to know minimally to be a coach, to be a proficient coach. Because we can focus so much on different education and different programming styles, but whatever your athlete, if you're going to have athletes, whoever your VIP, whoever your target market is, who they consistently run into a problem and you don't have something to address that, you are a bad coach. It doesn't really matter what you know. For us, lifters get back tweaks. That happens, it's just something that happens. If you're a running coach, your runners are going to get shin splints. Whatever it is for your sport or for you as a lifting coach, if you don't have a basic response to that, yeah, you're bad.
So we've also told people just coach, just start coaching. How do they know that or maybe they don't know, are they going to start as a bad coach, do you think?
That's a really good question. And I think you can start out as a good enough coach. There are we have the articles, How Not to Totally Suck as a Coach.
Yeah.
We've been thinking about this a while, and the ebook, the Coaching Kickstarter, but where we address some of those, you as a new coach, you need to know red lines for medical emergencies, either that happen in the gym or that, your lifter reports to you before a training session that contraindicate that I shouldn't be working with this person. You should be able to handle minor, tweaks, aches, or, that kind of thing that happens to any lifter that comes to you. You should be able to make simple adjustments to programming when someone approaches failure, when someone fails. Preferably, most novices don't need to fail. So, you need to be confident that I can make small adjustments to programming. And when it comes to a knowledge base, then I would say that's those are your core, you need to have a response prepared for this. And then of course there's the paperwork stuff. You probably should have a questionnaire, waiver, and insurance as basics for just professional not being a bad coach. And once you've met those, I'm sure we'll talk about more stuff later that kind of scrape on that, you're probably not good, but at least if you can meet those guidelines and stay professional and client-centered, you're probably not bad either.
Yeah, I think people really feel they feel the badness in a service or with a coach when your expectations don't line up with what actually just happened. Like when you come in to maybe a seminar or a lifting session, a coaching session, and you're expecting like this, best coach in the area specializing in barbell training and like kind of overselling. And then you get there and it's like a newer coach, which is okay to be new. But if you're promoting yourself as like this really experienced, lots of hundreds of reps under your belt, and then it's something different, that's where it feels bad. But if you're pretty upfront, then it'll actually be like, okay, maybe that's fine. But if you're mismatched there with expectations and reality, I think that's where people really feel it.
I think that's a really good point, and I should rewind back to before I even started thinking about those first steps of not being a bad coach is what it means, what the difference between bad and not good. You can have very qualified, like I even said it, you can have very qualified and experienced coaches who are bad. They're bad coaches or bad human beings, just, if we want to put people in that category. And then you can have coaches who aren't good. They're not expert.
Yeah.
They don't have a broad spectrum and palette and toolbox of solutions to problems. But like you said, I think that's a good place to start from, that to be not bad, you need to be able to handle those basics. You fairly represent yourself, and you are decent and professional with the people that you work with for their interest. Like you are interested in their goals instead of pushing your agenda. And I would kind of say full stop. That's the start. To be not bad.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Not bad. That's a good place to start. That is okay. Don't let being not bad get in the way of being not good enough. Or something like that. So if we go back to the label of a bad coach, what do you think makes, like maybe would, if you had to describe a bad coach, what's something that you would use to describe them?
Yeah. So besides not having that minimum knowledge, which almost gets to scammy, like especially that's for coaches who aren't even lifters. Like when we talk in the Kickstarter, a lot of those things where, I don't even know what everyone experiences when they lift. If you've been lifting for 2 years, you probably know. If you've been in a gym for 2 years, you probably already know that. So I'd say, that's within the spectrum of a bad coach, misrepresenting complete inexperience. A bad coach operates outside of scope. So they step into experiences and zones and skills that they don't have, especially outside of the coaching domain, because then the client really doesn't know what to expect. A bad coach, I guess you could talk about basic human decency and how you handle blame, how you handle the authority that you have in the coaching relationship, or at least the respect that you have, how you use that. A bad coach would be an unprofessional one, which is fuzzy, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about that, because what does professionalism mean? So yeah, those are the ones that immediately come to mind for me. Like, in the bad coach box, I fit these concepts.
Yeah. Yeah. Big ones for sure on the lack of professionalism, because you're really, as a coach, you're trying to make it possible for this person to work with you and then possible for them to get better. And if you're not professional, things are going to happen. Like, you're not going to be able to contact them. You're going to show up late. Like, you actually end up making it harder for them to make any progress because you're inconsistent, or, you're not getting paid or not able to collect payment. So or hard to communicate with. And that makes it like, it increases friction. And then, big
They're almost
time
like a coach-shaped
scope.
hole. Like, they could probably do even better if they just went to the gym and sort of tried to figure that out, compared to navigating the hassle of working with someone who's unprofessional and unprepared.
Mm-hmm. A coach-shaped hole. That's great. What scopes, like you said something about operating outside your scope. So for a barbell coach, what would be things that are outside of their scope?
So scope is so funny. And not just in the ebook, but in general, because there's legal scope and then there's the scope of our skill. So we are not a licensed profession. Coaches are not a licensed profession, period. So there is no governing body that is going to tell me, CJ, you can't tell this individual based on these criteria that they can't do barbells, or you have to do dumbbells with this person. That is the overriding standard for our licensing board. That doesn't exist. So technically, the legal scope for what I do is to not step on other professionals' legal scope. So whatever is the restrictions in your province, state, country for dietitians, for nutrition, stepping onto that would clearly be outside of legal scope. And so you have to know your local laws for what that means. If there are, psychiatry is a licensed profession, as well as most medical professionals are. So if you even have in that language, I'm going to cure your blank. I'm going to fix your blank. That tends to run into
diagnose you as.
Yes. Mm-hmm. If you tell a client, oh, it looks like you have X condition, and that's in Latin, you're probably stepping on somebody. You're probably stepping on somebody else's legal scope, either a physical therapist, a nutritionist, or an actual medical provider.
Yeah. And from what I understand, you could say like, it sounds like it could be this, but also I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. And I recommend, considering that this may be a possibility, let's do X. As one thing, it's that navigating scope. Okay, I can't diagnose this, but I have to, until they go to see a professional, I can recommend, I think you might have the situation, you should go see a doctor to be sure. Until they have that diagnosis from a qualified professional, I still have to make coaching choices. So if I think they have X condition and that's going to change my programming choices, I still need to make that call, working with them. So I think the language that we use, like, hey, I recommend you go see a doctor, and here's my reasons why I think we should be doing X, because I think that's important. And that's where we get into that fuzzy space in scope, which is so I think there's two pieces to it. One, if a client presents with a problem, we can get too narrow by deciding that any client who presents a problem that I'm not comfortable with, I'm now outside of scope. My client says that they get a little bit neurotic around food and they want to be a power lifter. And I'm like, okay, I would like to recommend that they take in 1 gram per pound of protein or whatever the recommendation is for this particular client. Is it outside of scope for me to provide strength training for someone who has had disordered eating in the past, or even someone who has never had disordered eating? They're just like a little bit touchy around food. They have some food restrictions. They have they're very picky around food, or texture issues or things like that. If we get to that point, we can scope ourselves out of working with anyone. Is someone who says that they're high stress. They show up in the gym one day and they're like, Coach, I'm feeling like crap, and I've been feeling like crap for 2 weeks. Sorry, nope, I'm not working with you until you go see a psychiatrist.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's depression. Nope. Coach, I have a backache. Nope. Physical therapist. You got to. So I think it is there. There's where the gray space is, where I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to fix this issue. I'm here to hold space for you and come up with a training program that works within the issues that you're dealing with right now, while recommending a relationship with a professional if that's what's necessary.
And your ability then as the strength coach is to adjust as needed. You definitely will let pain be a guide. You're certainly, you don't want to be like, well, just, tough it out, no pain, no gain kind of thing. It's like, no, you're totally within your realm to movements. Like, you are a movement professional, and you be able to use your arsenal of movement knowledge to be like, all right, let's adjust this, let's adjust this, let's adjust this. And then your knowledge of how to still work towards that goal can benefit you without needing to be a PT professional or to know anything about rehab. Like, don't ever let yourself feel pressured to know anything about that.
You just made a great point there, which is in terms of, I think, where we accidentally violate scope, which is where we tell the client what they're experiencing. When you say, just push through, and when you say, oh, it's all in your head, or when we say, everyone can eat 1 gram per pound a day, and we sort of roll over their objections, what we have actually done is diagnose. When we say it's all in your head, pain-wise, or when we tell someone to push through, what we have just done there is diagnose a psychosomatic condition. That's what that is. We have just told somebody that their pain does not have, we are telling them, it does not have a mechanical correlate that what we're doing could make worse. Right? I have told them that for sure and said, don't listen to your body, listen to me. I am substituting for your choice right now. And that's where I think we really accidentally trip over scope.
And that's a tough one because, like you said, that's going to come up with lifters. Like, people are going to have backs that get, uncomfortably sore. It's going to be a tweak. It's going to be a shoulder issue, like sometimes a knee and a hip stuff. Those things come up a lot in lifting. So, like you said before, like, hold space for them to say how they feel, say what it's doing for them. And you don't have to assume anything. In fact, that's one of my dings, or something that really indicates to me that someone is a bad coach, is they assume how the client's feeling, or they assume an injury, or they assume how it's going to get better, or they assume that they're not telling you anything. Like, the more you're filling space instead of your client is filling the space, bad.
Ooh. Yeah, I like that. The more you're filling the space. Because we don't have to. They're the ones making the choices. They're the ones who are going to the gym and actually doing the work. So we're providing guidance and we provide accountability sometimes. And there's that question, what's accountability, what's blame? Maybe we'll get into that. But that to me is kind of that clear marker of, if I'm pushing through, if I'm pushing my ideas and my thoughts so hard into that space that they just back out and do what I say, then I'm a bad coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I picked that up in coaches who talk a lot. And, like, if I've gone to a coaching session, or even some jiu-jitsu classes I've gone to before, where we're there for an hour and it's like, I've just listened to this guy talk for like 25 minutes. And now I'm supposed to do this drill that he's said like 3,500 different things about. And then we drill for like 10 minutes. And then he's talking again for another 25 minutes. And I've drilled again for like 10 minutes. Like, what did I get out of that hour? Like, that was, the coach's job is to turn something complicated into something simple, and then to help you, I think, move through it. And if the coach is, talking about themselves, or talking, not giving you a chance to move and to improve, then I think it's becoming a session that's about them instead of about you.
Ooh.
Instead about the coach instead of the lifter.
Being about, yeah, because there's so many things. We put out an Instagram video, just kind of a funny one, about like, don't be the over researcher, right? As a coach, don't be the over talker as a coach. That one's coming out, probably a little bit after this podcast publishes. But so funny that you mentioned that one. But I think it all, like, instead of just listing all the things, I think it boils down to, is the session about the coach?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is an interesting line to walk, because, like, you want to go, and the coach needs to kind of prove to some extent that they're going to be the right person to guide you through this. So it's like, there needs to be a chance for you as the coach to show up and kind of show your skill. But I don't know, like, have you ever been on like dates where you've left and you're just like, did I even say anything about myself? Like, did I get to share anything about me? Or did I just listen to them talk about their ex-girlfriend for like 45 minutes?
Ooh, yeah, don't bring your ex to the Tinder date. No, I actually, you make a really good point there, which is, there's the classic line, don't date your clients, but, and I'm generally really good advice. But the metaphor of a coaching relationship to a dating relationship, or at least a first date is important. On that first session with somebody, you said, yes, you do want to demonstrate value. You do want to help them solve their problems. And if they already had all the answers and all the knowledge, they wouldn't be hiring you. So you do have to bring something to the table. But just like in that conversation on that first date, the smart, player in that conversation wants to be 40% talking. They want the other person, they want to be there, but they want the other person to get away like, wow, like that person's a really good listener. Like that person was or, oh, they had such an interesting thought here. And then you don't want to be the one playing on the 60, the 70, the 80% of the time.
Yeah. You gotta let your client come in and be themselves too. Yeah. Interesting. You said something about blame. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So this is for me, I think, the biggest piece to being about the coach instead of being about the lifter. So when we bring our model like hard to the system, like I am here to prove that CrossFit, super slow, whatever my thing is, kettlebells, I'm here to prove that works. And I push that energy into the arrangement, then if it doesn't work, I only have one option, which is it's your fault.
It's terrible.
Right? Right.
It makes me feel so gross.
the only option is you're not doing the thing. So, if I truly believe that super slow is the thing or high intensity training is the thing and it's not working for the client, I'm sure I can develop a flow chart of like, okay, these are the most common errors that people make executing super slow, and go through all the things. And eventually, if they work through the end of my checklist and they're still not showing improvement, my answer is, I guess you're broke. I guess you're not telling me what you're really doing when we're not working together. I guess you need drugs. You need supplementation, because which is all blame because the coach is bringing the too much to the system. And part of what they're bringing is I need to prove myself or my strategy works for all. So where that really gets interesting though is accountability, because we screw up. Clients screw up. I've been a client. I'm a lifter. I don't show up. I'm not 100% honest with my coach about what I did that day. And so there is that point when we're not blaming the client, but we are holding accountability to what the client said their goals were. And so we have to be like, we do have to step in and go, you're probably not eating 1,200 calories. And gaining weight here. So let's talk about that. Let's break down what that means. And it's using confrontation as a strategy, as a tool within a relationship, instead of as an assumption that, you're broke and I need to convince you that you are so that it's not my fault. Vice, you don't realize, or maybe you don't realize that you're missed something, or that there's an element here, or because we do kind of lie to ourselves a little bit. So I'm going to make it explicit. I'm going to bring that to the front, and then we're going to have a conversation about that. And that's a fine line to walk. But I do think it's more common that we, especially in, coaching services, step into that blame space.
You said you have to confront, there has to be like a confrontation, but it's really like you have to have a conversation about something. And it made me think of so many times when I'll pop on to coach and I'll see a message that I read. It's something like they're asking a question about their programming, or like, why did you do this? Why isn't this working? Like, I was hoping we'd be here by now. And I have, that physical reaction. My face turns red. I start to sweat a little bit. And I kind of want to stop coaching for the day because they're bringing something to the surface that needs to be brought to the surface. And I think there's always a loop, and I'm sure some people are better about this than others, but it's like, for me, it's like, what did I do wrong? I go through that part. And then it's like, I didn't do anything wrong. Everything, I know exactly what I'm doing. So it's like this interesting battle of like being defensive, but also like, shoot, I did something wrong. Does that happen to you?
Yeah. Well, so because they're holding you accountable. If they're doing it right, they're holding you accountable, but it feels like blame.
Yeah. But it's okay. Like it's okay for them to do it. It's like an interesting emotional response that
and vice versa.
Acceptable.
When we bring that confrontation, like how in that general sense of a confrontation, like I am bringing to the forefront the fact that something is not aligned between our expectations. How many times will our clients see that as blame when we think we're bringing accountability? So how can we, like, just like you experienced as a coach, like in that feeling like, oh, my day's shut down, I don't want to work out now, you know, like that's what they're feeling. So how do we work that?
So I think like a bad coach would be, they would really latch on to the defensive side. Whereas a good coach would, you know, sit with whatever discomfort that brought up and kind of listen to their question, have a conversation with them about where it's coming from, or really make sure you're even just clear on the question. And then you have to actually look at your work and be like, did I make the right choices? Or is there something that I could have done differently? And, you know, not to like totally penalize yourself or anything, but turn it into a learning opportunity. Be humble. And just maybe you did make a mistake, maybe you didn't, but it's okay to go back on your work or look ahead at the program, see what happened, and kind of be the human instead of this like defensive, no, it's fine, just keep working out. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's the same things when we talk about, you know, are we to our clients, are you coachable? Are we clientable?
Ooh, that's yes.
Yeah, the language of that is weird, but it's so true. Are we responsive? There's in Crucial Conversation, they talk about a mutually assured purpose. If there are mutually agreed upon purpose, if the mutually agreed upon purpose for the relationship is that they're going to see X results, and we both agree on that, and we accept that we're not perfect, then the inevitable outcome is they are going to come to the table with our imperfections, or their perception of our imperfections, of our mistakes, or just information. They need to bring this to the table and be like, I'm not getting the results I wanted. What can we do to change that? If our mutual agreed on purpose is solid, then we should be able to step back. Of course, it's going to feel bad.
Yeah.
But we should be able to step back and be like, okay, yeah, maybe I screwed up here. Maybe there was a miscommunication, whatever. Maybe you didn't respond physically the way we expected you to. And This is a tactical, mechanical problem, you know, whatever it is. As soon as we can't enter that conversation, we know that's not really what we're in it for. We're not in it for the client's best interest, and we're a bad coach.
Yep. Man, that's a big one.
Or we're being a bad coach in that moment.
It's
not, you know, it's not like as a person, you are a bad coach.
Oh yeah. I've had definitely moments of being bad coach Niki. Yeah. And I'm sure there will be more, but we will get better, right?
That's the point.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just like being aware of, like you said, in the moment, you know what? I could go this way or I could go this way. Which way do I want to go? What are some other bad coach indicators? This is helpful for me as a coach. All my clients are going to be like, finally, she's hearing all this.
She knows. Nah.
Confrontation is a strategy. Yeah. Versus an assumption. Yes. What about professionalism?
Ooh,
there's so much we could talk about there.
This one's tough because it's so subjective, right? Like, you know, what is there are you know, within the coaches Slack, as we chat back and forth, every once in a while there's a client coach relationship where they have a really good friendly back and forth, and they make jokes with each other, and so it works within their relationship to share that way. And yet I think to myself, I'm like, if I said that to person X, that would not be good.
I cannot talk about their body part in that way.
Right. You know, or poke fun of their press, or, you know, or do whatever it is. And so professionalism, there can't be a strict, if you do X, then Y. It is unprofessional, except at the very edges of that, where pretty much certain activities are always unprofessional. But a lot of the time, it's contextual to the relationship.
That's interesting. What about for me, when professionalism comes up, I think of doing what you say you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. So we're going to have a session at this time. Cool. You're going to show up on time. Client's going to show up on time. Or communication about rescheduling and canceling, like consistency in policies. Is it well communicated? Do I know what's going to happen if I get canceled on, or if whatever? It's very clear. It's understood. It's communicated. And it's consistent every time it happens. That's something that's professional to me. Or not being on your cell phone during a coaching session is professional. But then, like you said, if you're buddies, you're like, well, maybe we'll both just check out our fantasy football right now. And that's okay. But it's there needs to be some things that you set the standard of, which are going to be the same across the board, that can maybe change a little bit as your relationship develops. The interesting thing I think about the gray area of professionalism, where it starts to get really chummy, is that is fine if the relationship is going well. But if the relationship starts to suffer, if they're not lined up well on programming, or if you miss a session and they're like, it's okay, it's just my buddy, then the other stuff that's getting to be borderline will instantly become not okay. And so it's you have to, if you start to go into that friendly zone, you still have to treat them like they're your client in a professional way, because they're still going to want to hold you or be able to trust you for certain professional things, like showing up on time and canceling, or anything that I just said. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What I'm hearing there is, if the two words that stand out are clarity and trust. So that expectations and boundaries are clear between the coach and the client, and that they are reinforced by action so consistently that each party has trust that if I do X, Y is going to happen. It's what's that they talk about, secure attachment. That I know this caretaker is going to be there for me when I need it under these conditions, and this is how they've always supported me.
Yeah.
The same way with a coach, I know that if I miss this session, this is how it's going to go, or I know that if I show up, my coach is going to be there, and we're going to go through this session. And oftentimes it's not even spoken, because they've just never missed a session.
Right.
So it's so deep that it's not even a thought until your coach needs to, I got in a car crash, I can't make it. And then, those unprofessional moments, of course, there's, we give ourselves slack. I like how you said, if the anchor is there, if there's clarity and if there's trust, then you can, I'm not going to say push. It's not the word. It's not like we're trying to become more friendly. It depends on the relationship. But then a lot of those little things, a lot of the gray space, is this not, tends to become a lot more clear, because the client has that trust that, they can say, that's not cool with me, or the coach is holding their boundaries as to, this isn't cool with me.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Sorry, Steven. Tactile cues on your microphone.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one with professionalism. What are the things that are for sure unprofessional? You said there are things that are always unprofessional. Let's just tell people what they are.
For anyone who's watching that on video, my cat just attacked my.
Is that what that was?
Cable. Yeah, that was great. There are certain things in terms of that are part of our social norms. So there's always going to be questions involved in touching. If a coach is touching a client, sometimes it's absolutely necessary. We have an article about it. I think it's called The New Rules of Cueing, Professionalism, but where touching is always going to be a point when expectations need to be clear and people need the space to say no, if you're going to use a tactile cue in that respect.
Yeah.
There's within the online space, I think maybe it's part of my military experience, but I've always been more on the cautious side of things, like cracking jokes with the client and that kind of thing until I get to know them. Like that boundary expands slowly over time, instead of just me coming out, bah,
Yes.
taking the CJ to 11, that relationship builds over time too. But those clear boundaries in terms of touching, in terms of like you said, the expectations not met, and dishonesty. Like I'm just expressing something that I am not, or a skill that I don't have, or saying I'm going to commit to something I know I can't. I bet you have some better examples too. Those are just the first ones that come to mind.
Yeah, the big ones for me were like inappropriate contact, inappropriate comments. Just, don't assume that everyone has the same ridiculous sense of humor that you do. It might take some time to get there. And then around like financial stuff, make sure you're collecting their billing safely. Don't, obviously things like, I know everything is online now, which is great, but just like being protective of their personal information, not leaving that stuff out and about. And
even online though, like that is such a great part that I hadn't considered as part of that scope. But we do video reviews, screenshots, things like that on a collective platform where we're coaching multiple clients. Like it is important that we share only what people have provided the consent to share.
Yeah, maintain that privacy. Yeah, and that's another one is consent for photography. If you're in person and you plan on using those images for your own marketing purposes, make sure you have your photography consent hopefully built into your waiver, which you also have. Yeah, those are the biggest ones that come to mind for like must-haves.
Those are great thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Anything else to cover for bad coaches?
I'd say last. I think I joked earlier, like basic human decency, but to me this stretches into like we've been talking a little bit into that, not like the not good, not bad.
Yeah.
You're a beginner coach, whatever, but you don't want to be bad. You want to be a beginner, but professional and competent and able to basically competent, able to handle those, those guaranteed scenarios. I think where not a lot of coaches find themselves in, but it definitely happens, is that great and bad. What strikes me, the situation is Alberto Salazar. So, he was alleged, and I think he's currently under a lawsuit for it right now, for abuse towards track athletes with the Nike Oregon project, I think it was. And Mary Kane was the first one that I know of, at least, to come out, written, participated in an article about it, filed suit, where, really just some humiliating practices, some pushing people to go below a weight that was healthy, pushing people into, pushing his athletes into red S, energy deficiency in sport.
Wow.
that is not good for their long-term health, and all for the purpose of winning. I'm going to get you to the podium, and I assume, I don't know him personally, that feeling that if you are not willing to make these sacrifices, you're a waste of my time. Like, I can find an athlete who's willing to do these things. And so I think there is an inherent power dynamic, whether we like it or not, and we try not to, between the coach and the client, especially in sport, especially with youth clients, especially when money's involved. So there are, purses, there are scholarships involved. And for coaches who are in that place, then I think we definitely at least have to acknowledge that level of being a bad coach, of not exercising power in a way that is detrimental to the client's long-term health or interests.
Yeah, definitely goes back to what the motivations are. Are the motivations for the coach? Are the motivations for the client? Yeah. Ooh, good one. That's disturbing. But yeah, very important.
Right. And it's one of those things we don't often think of. Like, we're so many of our coaches aren't at that level.
Yeah.
So many of those coaches aren't necessarily working with clients who are dependent. Like I said, those youth athletes with a chance at an NCAA Division I scholarship. That's not always the kind of clients who we work with, and the kind of transitioning coaches who this podcast is generally aimed at. But it happens. And today's coaches who are working with youth athletes now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, become those expert specialists within that field who are respected. And the small professionalisms that you mentioned earlier, kind of, they grow. Like, they grow with you as a coach. And those things that you let slide now become those things that you never should have let slide, that later on, when the stakes increase, when things start to matter again, when money gets on the podium and people's dreams and goals and podium placements.
Yeah. Well,
heavy.
It's good. Hopefully. I think one thing that really resonated with me today is a good coach really connects with the human and acknowledges that they're also a human with their own imperfections, and how you get to work on that together and grow is really important, versus a bad coach who is gonna be in denial, or, like you said, blame, and is a little bit selfish. So hopefully you're none of those.
Just boils down to caring, right?
Can we just all get along? Are we both in California right now?
Can't we just be good? So yeah, and that's why, and for me, what I catch too, what I really liked about what you put out there is there's so many of the little things that slip our minds when we think about professionalism. Things like, consent for information, privacy, making your session on time, that are so much of that, and so much of what we are actually being paid to do, which is to deliver a service.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, CJ, and thanks everybody for listening. If this was useful to you and if you enjoyed it, please go on to wherever you're listening to your podcast and give us a review. We'd love to hear it. It helps other people learn about us more, which could be really useful for the world to have better coaches, or at least not bad coaches. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.